Hello and welcome to my channel, or back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a very difficult topic: Social Security, SSI, forced retirement age 62, and more. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm going to talk about the big, beautiful bill at the end of this, something that has come into our lives and how it really could affect us later. But this is some of the pitfalls and problems you're going to run into if you're being forced to retire at age 62. Social Security. Get on with that now. And I'm going to basically be showing you the blog entry, my blog entry that I wrote about this, and I'm going to read from it and refer back to it while interjecting some other things. So let's start off with this. What's SSR? What's SSI? The silent shift. What SSI recipients aren't told at 62 and forced to retire. I'm going to note I'm not a lawyer, financial planner, or government representative. I'm just someone who navigated the maze and lived to tell the tale so far. And this is what I've learned or misunderstood along the way. For years, I was an unpaid family caregiver. I still am. I gave up my job, my income, and my future earnings to care for someone I loved. I never expected it to last as long as it did, and but it did. And suddenly I was older, broke, less healthy, and still invisible to the system. I quietly saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there was no credit given, just forms, just silence. And eventually I had to apply for benefits, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. And then the Social Security Administration decided to make me, on paper and in red tape, retire, because I was turning 62. Ageism at its worst, in aiming sights for those who are vulnerable. And the decision was already made. I didn't ask to retire. I didn't check a box or mark a calendar. But the system retired me anyway, with a letter, a phone appointment, and a decision that wasn't optional. I was told that by turning 62, I was now applying for Social Security retirement, not requesting, required. I'm telling you, I'm not kidding. Got the letters, Social Security. I got the phone appointments already set up, and I had to call in, and I got through a lot of hassle with them, and them basically telling me a few things on the phone. You have to retire, and now you're going to split what you were getting before under SSI with SSR. So my SSI would convert into a split, a reduced monthly amount from SSR, Social Security retirement, and a remainder from SSI to keep the total the same. The shift wouldn't even take effect for many months. So they sent me these letters in January. My birth date when I turned 62 wouldn't take into effect until a month after the first payment that came in after June. And then I got the follow-up letter. My monthly benefit would be cut in half. No mention of SSI, no explanation for the split. just numbers and silence. And when the math doesn't change, but everything else does. Now, I was worried because it said on the letter that I was getting no other benefits. I was eligible for nothing else. So worried, I called the SSA, Social Security Administration, to ask if I was still receiving SSI, because in the phone conversation or the application process, they said, yes, I would still be getting that, and I'd be getting a little more. Turned out not to be true. The SSR letter I got clearly said I was eligible for no other benefits, and that was disconcerting. Turns out nothing had changed except everything. The total stayed the same, but the sources were now split and reclassified behind the scenes. And because the net amount hadn't changed, there was no official letter, SSI letter, to explain the shift or the split. And that's the hardest part, the expectation that you'll somehow just know. SSR and SSI may both come from the SSA, but they behave like strangers with separate doors. This wasn't just a benefit shift, it was a structural change you're expected to understand by osmosis. Now, SSD versus SSI, the uneven burden. If you're receiving Social Security disability, SSD, the system treats you differently than if you're on supplemental Social Security income, SSI, not just in what you receive, but how and when they push you into retirement. On SSD, benefits automatically convert to retirement status at full retirement age, 66 to 67, without penalty. Same amount, no reapplication. On SSI, you're required to file for early retirement at 62. If you don't, your SSI may be suspended. And if you're on both SSD and SSI, transitions may or may not go smoothly. Some people experience a seamless shift. Others get dropped, overpaid, underpaid, all based on paperwork timing, not personal need. What you receive may depend less on your condition and more on the order of your forms. That's not a safety net. That's a balancing act. For. And there's another little thing no one really talks about. Disability recognized but not fully protected. There's a gray area that rarely gets acknowledged. You can apply for SSD, Social Security Disability, prove your disability, and even win your case before a Social Security judge, but still be denied SSD benefits because your work history doesn't meet the credit requirements. In that case, you're awarded SSI only. Your disability is real, it's acknowledged, it's recognized, but the system agrees you can't work, but because of how and where you worked or didn't, you lose access to the very protections that SSD was supposed to offer. And that includes this one, the right to retire at full age without penalty. People on SSD glide into full retirement at 66 or 67, no questions asked. But if your disability route was SSI only, you're forced into early retirement at 62 and locked into a lower monthly payment for the rest of your life. In other words, your disability is valid enough to win in court, but not earned enough to qualify for the same retirement protection. It's not just a bureaucratic gap, it's a systemic blind spot that happens more often than people realize. Now, what you should know and probably don't. SSA will contact you around age 61 3/4 if you're receiving SSI. You must file for early retirement at 62 unless already on SSD. Will receive a letter showing your SSR benefit amount. During the SSA call, ask, will SSI still cover the remaining difference? If your total benefit stays the same, SSI may send no update at all, no notice to you at all. And so if anything about your benefit feels off, call the SSA and confirm. Then versus now, the work history rule that quietly changed. For years, SSA used a 15-year window to determine if a person could return to work. That meant being evaluated on long-forgotten jobs, even ones that no longer existed. Now, as of June 22nd, 2024, that changed. The old rule was SSA reviewed jobs held in the last 15 years. The new rule, only jobs held in the past 5 years, and only if worked for at least 30 days. And why that matters, there's less pressure to explain outdated or irrelevant jobs, more focus on current limitations and real-world abilities, more accurate evaluations for older adults, and those with patchy work record. But this only helps if you know the change has happened. Now here's another one. When your SNAP benefits get snagged, the overpayment no one warns you about. Now I'm going to use some examples here, example numbers. So in June, my SSI shifted to SSR plus partial SSI. The system got out of sync, and here's what happened as an example. SSI deposited its usual $967 on June 1st. It was normal. SSR then deposited $536 on the 3rd of the month. My account showed $1,503 total, which SNAP flagged as my new monthly income. DHFS, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services here in Kentucky, sent a letter reducing my SNAP benefits to $23 a month. That SSR deposit wasn't new income. It was part of a realignment that hadn't fully clicked into place yet. I was overpaid. And SSA, Social Security Administration, would eventually claw that back, and claw that excess back. But SNAP reacted first, cutting my food benefits based on a number that wouldn't last. Now, I'm talking about food stamps here. And at least here in Kentucky, you can't report future expenses in advance, like rising rent. Let's say your rent lease renewals comes up in August, but you're back here in June. But you know your rent's going to go up, your new lease, you're going to have to sign it. They won't even take that into consideration until you paid it and show that you paid it. Not just when you sign the new lease, even though you could probably prove it that way if you wanted to, but try to. But you can't report those future expenses. But SNAP can and will act on projected income before it arrives. If Social Security says your check's going to be this amount, this inflated amount, they know in advance, and they reevaluate you based on that amount because it's been flagged in the system, and you don't hear anything about it until you get a letter in the mail saying we've reevaluated you, and now you're only going to be getting this much. And in my case, I got the letter at the end of the month on Saturday, and the 30th was on Monday. Last day I could call, so I called in, told them all this stuff, and they said, well, you're going to have to prove that, send all this paperwork in, but case has already been reevaluated, and tomorrow you're only going to be getting $23 on your food stamp card. And so you may end up using overpaid SSA funds just to eat, even though you'll owe that money back, and you'll be in that hole because the money you spent wasn't yours to spend, and you can't keep it because of food stamps, because they're two separate agencies, two separate things. One's a state thing, one's the SSA. So I had to call the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, explain the misalignment, and request reevaluation. And so while waiting, I had less money to spend on food, more anxiety, because of systems that didn't coordinate their timing. And no, SSA doesn't explain this ahead of time. You have to figure out this the hard way. An update to this, since I wrote this blog entry, is I did get all the paperwork together that I needed to have without an SSI letter, because I never got one. And they're not going to send one back out until they realign the system. So I had to prove that my rent was this, and my expenses were this, and my income was actually this by sending them the letter from SSR showing my only amount was this amount. And I got the letter, and they reinstated my food stamps back at the original amount, even though I had reported more expenses. My rent has gone up twice since they did their last evaluation. But my amount stayed the same. But it's for next month. I will get nothing this month. And there's nothing I could have done about it. And I'm going to be thinking about other ways to get a hold, maybe the ombudsman, maybe file a letter, see if that can be appealed. But while you're in it, we're expecting that money to be applied. All of a sudden, it doesn't come in. You get a letter with no time to respond. By the way, they did send me the request forms for all this information they needed me to provide, and I had 5 days to respond. So I took it over to Kinko's, all the paperwork, copies, and made faxes and faxed it to them so they get it, and that cost me $30. That was not fun. So let's move on. Now, consent versus compliance. I didn't choose to retire. I complied with the requirement. Filing at 62 locked in a lower monthly benefit permanently. The transition created real stress, from confusing letters to cut off support at the risk of overpayment clawbacks. If I hadn't asked the right questions at the right time, when I got the letters, I knew what to do. I wouldn't have known what I was actually eligible to keep. So during the SSI call to apply me for SSR, I asked all the right questions, but I got nothing in writing except confusing letters. So I had to call them back and reconfirm everything. And if you spend the money you weren't supposed to receive, like the overpayment from SSR and SSI, you'll still have to pay it back. So during this process, when you're forced to retire by Social Security, expect disruption. Question everything during your SSA phone call. Don't trust the system to talk to itself. If you receive overpayments, set them aside. They're not yours. Contact your SNAP provider early and explain what may be coming. That may or may not offset this. It will depend on the people you're talking to and what they have in place. But if you're not expecting that overpayment because you never got a letter, no one sent you a letter saying you're going to get, let's say that's $1,500 when you're expecting $967 or whatever it is. You don't know what's coming, but the SNAP people do. And they take action before it even happens. So you have to be mindful of the thing. Now, in my closing, I'm going to say this isn't legal advice. This is lived advice. Learn from my confusion. Maybe yours won't arrive so silently. And if you're been a family caregiver, this is for everybody, but if you're a family caregiver who's gone through this, where you go in and you gave up your life to become the family caregiver, lost everything in the balance, and then gets into the Social Security system. You got to remember, you're not alone. The system wasn't built for us caregivers in mind. We still have to survive in spite of it. You may have sacrificed a career or pension or your own health to keep someone else out of institutionalized care, which costs taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. But you've taken on that burden. You may have done the work of three paid professionals quietly and unpaid, and now you're left trying to navigate a system that doesn't even remember your name. They only know you by your Social Security number. This post, the blog post, is for you. May it help you see the pitfalls coming and know that you're not the only one who's been forced to call survival a retirement plan. This is quite a difficult thing. Had to do, are doing. And so I want to talk a little bit about, this is what I went through, and I hope some parts of that, and do look at the link in the description if you want to read this and print it out or whatever. But there's not a lot of solutions I can give you other than those little advice that I've talked about. Try to get it in advance. Get notice to the SNAP people in advance. When you get the letter from SSR you're going to have a phone appointment, you got to get that phone appointment. And you got to go through that process of retiring because you're forced into it. You have no option if you want to keep your benefits the way they were. And it's just one of those things where you have to know in advance, because they don't tell you. You may not get letters from SSI. You may not get letters from SSD. And in some cases, SSD doesn't automatically convert over. And in some cases, SSI doesn't automatically convert over. You got to be very careful and clear on that phone call you're applying to know what you're getting, why you're getting it, and how you're going to get it, because you may not get anything in the mail except a confusing thing that makes it look like you're not eligible for any benefits when SSI is still going to be kicking in. Now, we'll talk about the big, beautiful bill. I'm going to read this off here. It may sound like a gift-wrapped win for seniors, but beneath the ribbon are a few sharp edges that people need to watch out for, especially those already navigating SSI, SSD, or early retirement transition. There's $6,000 deduction isn't a tax repeal. The bill does not eliminate taxes on Social Security. It adds a temporary deduction for seniors 65 and over with incomes under $75,000 and $150,000 for couples. If you're under 65, you don't qualify yet, even if you're receiving SSR or SSD or SSI or both. The deduction expires in 2028, so it's a short-term break, not a permanent fix. And it accelerates trust fund insolvency. By reducing the taxable income, the bill cuts revenue flowing into the Social Security Trust Fund by an estimated $30 billion per year. That means the projected insolvency date for the trust fund has moved up to 2032, which is just around the corner, and benefit cuts could be deeper, up to 24% across the board. There's no relief for disabled or survivors under 65. The deduction only applies to those 65 and older, leaving out millions of SSDI recipients, survivors, and disabled adults who rely on Social Security but don't meet the age threshold. This creates a two-tier system. Retirees get relief, disabled folks don't, even if their income is lower. The bill doesn't account for rent increases, inflation, or regional cost of living spikes, which means people like us who've reported higher housing costs may still get no SNAP benefits at all unless they push for redetermination. The SSA and White House have promoted the bill, the big beautiful bill. It has no tax on Social Security, but that's not accurate. It's a deduction, not a repeal. Many seniors may assume they're exempt from taxes now and get blindsided if they file. So that adds more levels onto all of this. And I don't know how it's going to be turning out with this big, beautiful bill going into effect and what exactly it's going to cut and not cut. But being forced to retire at 62 to take a lower retirement amount, which is permanent, is part of the system if you're on SSI. And I hope this video will help clear up something in some of your minds and maybe get some information and thought process going about it, because there are many pitfalls here that you don't see. You think the system will all perfected, all be cookie cutter. It's not. There are things we have to watch out for. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again at another time.